Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Acting Secretary, Deputy Secretary, it's great for you to join us. It's been a lot of moving pieces in this budget to kind of get your head around, especially dealing with the taxes. So I don't envy the department's job in putting this all together. Now, you had mentioned the total tax liability of Pennsylvanians will be reduced by 13%. How do you get to that number? Because I'm seeing a $4.7 billion increase this year, $8 billion next year. That's $12.7 billion over the next 2 years because you have different starting times of taxes, which if the general public doesn't understand, our fiscal year starts July, tax years traditionally start January 1st. How do you get that 13%?
That figure is based on an average household, not the total, not everyone. It is based on an average.
Okay. When I look at the property tax relief package, A1-12 in the governor's executive booklet, beginning in October 2016, $3.6 billion will be transferred from the property tax relief fund and distributed to homeowners and renters. Now that $3.6 billion includes $600 million of slot revenue that's currently there, or is that new?
No, the $3.6 million does not include the $600 million of slots revenue.
Okay. When I look through the next page down, I see a beginning balance of zero, and this is all on A1-12. PIT restricted revenues, $2.1 billion, 15-16. That carries over the next year where there's additional $4.5 billion directed into the PIT restricted revenue. Out of the total funds available of $6.7 billion, $3.6 billion are transferred out. What happens to the other $3 billion?
That stays in the fund and receives additional revenue the following year to pay for the following year's property tax rebates and rent rebates. The same way that the $600 million you were talking about from slots gaming works right now, the money goes in during the fiscal year and joins up with money that's already carried over from the prior year in the fund and then is paid out in the form of reduced homestead property tax bills.
So out of over 2 years, out of $6.7 billion in taxpayers' dollars, only $3.6 billion goes out, and that's how you calculate that 13% off?
No, the 13% is a typical household.
What if the household is a small business owner, since this property tax money goes primarily to homeowners and renters? What would that tax liability for that family home be?
Well, they presumably live in a house that maybe they own, and so if they're a homeowner, and if they are an average homeowner at the median income level of about $65,000, then that would apply to them.
Okay.
It's a typical homeowner.
But as a small business, you'd be paying the PIT because 79% of businesses pay it. You'd have a huge tax liability and only getting it back on your residence, not on your business side, correct?
Let me address your question about the balance in the fund that's shown on this page. Essentially, that's because of the timing of the payment that's made in October.
I get the timing issue because you're doing a half-year tax. I get that. My only issue is you're sitting on $3 billion of taxpayers' money that's sitting there. I mean, you raise taxes to the tune of $6 billion, and half of it is getting paid out. The other half is just sitting there.
But let me just clarify that you have to have enough money in the fund to pay out these property tax reductions in October. And if there's zero in the fund on June 30th, that can't happen. Mm-hmm. So there has to be a period of time in which you are building a balance so that money can go out in October. And that's the reason that those numbers are there.
Yeah, but only $3.6 billion goes out. The other $3 is just sitting there, and you maintain a fund balance of $3 billion throughout, which, by the way, is decreasing because you go from 3.66 to 3.631. So it's a decreasing amount you're projecting getting paid.
The $3 billion that's shown here is measured at June 30th, and the money needs to be there so it's available in October.
Okay. Now, part of this is PIT restricted revenue. What does sales tax go to? because you mentioned sales tax and property tax relief. I don't see anything in here about sales tax and property tax. What's the connection? What am I missing?
The sales tax revenues are being dedicated in part to make payments to the school employees retirement fund to address our obligation to make those payments.
So we're raising taxes on residents to pay for our pensions, correct?
We are raising taxes overall to increase funding for education, to provide for property tax relief.
But the
to
sales
address
tax
the
isn't doing any of that. That's going
deficit.
straight to pensions, correct?
Yes, no, I said
going straight to
portion of
pensions.
it, a portion
Just a
of it
portion.
is dedicated to that, yes,
What's the rest of it going to? General fund?
yes.
Okay. Within the sales tax, you mentioned food, clothing, and prescription drugs. On, again, I'll pull up A1-12, the exemption is food, clothing, and prescription drugs. At 3:51 on March 3rd, we had an updated list of what that does and does not entail. And then later, the administration put out the last list, which I think the chairman mentioned. Part of the exemption list is prescription drugs and orthopedic equipment. They're lumped together. Is orthopedic equipment exempted, or is that taxed?
Exempted.
That's exempted, okay. And when you go through here from business to business transactions, and it's been said many times to get businesses to pay their fair share. So if a natural gas drilling company buys Steelers tickets, because that's now sales tax, is that business to business transaction?
I think the answer to that is no.
No.
The business-to-business exemption that was in Senate Bill 76 covered essentially professional services, and that's being carried over in this proposal.
So what are spectator sports? Does that
Okay.
include Penn State, Pitt, Temple?
I would have to check for you.
All right. So here's my issue with this tax package. We're using sales tax, not for property tax, even though it's lumped in with property taxes. We don't know exactly what exemptions we are or are not applying. I'm not sure if this is presented a balanced budget anymore because of the inconsistencies with that exemptions, what is and what is not taxed. I've been in discussions on Senate Bill 76 since I've been in office. I can tell you not a lot of people understand what is and what is not taxed to begin with in that plan, and it's changed many, many times over. So I just have real concerns with the direction the administration is going, particularly with these taxes. It is not boding well. It's not boding well with the general public at all. With that, Mr. Chairman, I will relay my time to the next speaker.
Thank you, Representative.